All right. Hello, everyone. This is Amira Armond, and we have Jill Wright from my team. And we're going to talk about actually performing the change ticket process and using the change database according to the KCD. You ready, Jill?
I'm ready.
Okay. So you should be able to see my screen. This is Office 365 SharePoint because that's what my company uses. And we have imported the database definition for the change database. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm creating a new change ticket. So the change process is designed to go in several phases. The first phase, which is kind of phase 0, it's kind of an overall phase, is to identify basic information about your change that governs it overall, right? So what are you trying to do? Is it a minor, major, or emergency change? What is the status of the change? Is it, the planning time? Are you in the process of testing it? Are you, actually pushing it out to your environment? Are you cleaning up? Are you closing the change? Who's in charge of that change from start to finish, hopefully? The summary of the change, which would be potentially a paragraph or even more about what's going on. The source incident ID, so this is most of the time not applicable, but if you have a system that broke, say one of your switches that's important to your system totally just died and you need to get a new switch in, that is considered a change. It's also considered an incident, a break fix incident. But because you're changing your environment by installing a new switch, it's also considered a change. So the idea is that if we're talking about something like that, where you've got an outage going on, you'd actually put in an incident ticket in the incident database and then start the change ticket to fix it, and you type in the number of that incident ticket here just for tracking back and forth. The overall planning milestones, so these are big tasks, like, for the next 3 weeks, we're going to test the change or, select vendors, and then for 2 weeks, we're going to review the change. And then the week after that, we're actually going to push it out. And then we're going to have a troubleshooting period. And then we're going to have a wrap up period. And then we'll be done. Right. So big tasks like that, or maybe you're doing a multi-step migration. So it might be, order the switch, receive the switch, install the switch, testing, burn-in period, and then wrap up. This activity log is for time-stamped entries where you can update what you did over time. So the idea is any time you perform an action that needs to be time-stamped, like, I received the switch, you could just type it in here into the activity log. And if you've got your list set up correctly, it's going to date stamp it and time stamp it, and just successively date stamp and time stamp each thing as you put it in. So you have this log, this documentation, this tracking of what you did during the change. So this is the end of the main section, which really applies to the entire change. Install Cisco switch to replace broken Linksys switch, right? So since our scenario is the Linksys switch is down, is causing issues, we're going to make that this is a emergency change type, and we're going to put in the incident ID, which let's just pretend it was incident number 33 in the incident database for that outage. Now, when you read the change management policy, it really talks about these change types, and it gives you information about what makes a change into a minor, major, or emergency change. The differences are that a minor change only has to be approved by one person, and it's generally not expected to be a highly risky activity, that it doesn't change a whole lot about your environment. A major change needs to be approved by a change approval, which is typically at least 2 people, if not many people, for a very large company, which is normally a voting activity. And then an emergency change has special rules. Normally, emergency changes are considered major changes, and you get to expedite the emergency change. So you would still want to get one layer of approval, but you don't need to go through the full change approval board before you perform work. So right now we're in planning because I haven't even filled out this change ticket. So I'm going to do it really fast because we're down. I'm going to put my name as the change sponsor because I'm the one trying to get this done. And I'm going to say the Linksys switch in building 2 is faulty, crashing every hour. Need to replace it urgently. Okay. So there you go. That's a summary of change. My planning would be today. So the milestone would be obtain new switch. Amira 210. So that would be tonight, right? I'd be going to Best Buy or getting urgent 1-day shipping. Install new switch done by Amira, perhaps tomorrow, right? And that might be all that your milestones are. If this was a less urgent action, a lot of times you'd have a middle step that would say, test. But in our case, since it's an emergency, we don't really have time to do that. So I'm just going to pull that out.
Cross your fingers.
Cross our fingers. All right, so now we're entering the formal planning. So what is the cost of this change? Well, Cisco switches are expensive, so let's just say $3,000 for the new switch. How many labor hours will this take? Let's say 8 hours between doing the change ticket, planning it, ordering it, receiving it, installing it, and then wrap up. Right, so those all add time, and you should account for all that documentation time. And don't forget that you're supposed to also update your hardware inventory with the new switch, right? So perform a security impact analysis. Document results below. So this one's actually a super important step, which you should slow down and perform some thought about. And in the change management policy, you can read what it advises for this step. At a high level, the idea is that you're going to think what security could be messed up by making this change. Right, so this is a point where you might go, oh my goodness, my existing switch has access control lists in it. It has VLANs in it, which are being used to isolate and segment traffic from each other so that the sensitive data isn't overheard. And when you start thinking about that, you might go, oh man, I need to make sure that the new switch has all that stuff set up on it before I put it into production, right? So you should actually talk about this. So need to make sure that VLANs and access control lists are reapplied before installing new switch, right? If this is not done, we could have overheard. I'm not sure if that's the right term. We could have snooping performed against sensitive information on the network, right? And you could also consider other stuff, right? So the idea is that you're actually reviewing every single CMMC practice in your head right now. Do you need to set up individual user accounts for each administrator? Do you need to disable the admin account on the switch? Do you need to enable FIPS mode on anything? Do you need to get documentation about the switch or licensing or support, or do you have to update the firmware, right? There's a lot of stuff you have to think about. And whenever there's a task that you might forget, you know, you want to mention it here, right? Need to update firmware on the switch. Right. Any thoughts so far, Jill?
I was thinking that, not during an emergency, but there'll be times when somebody's filling this out actually in the change approval board meeting, some of this stuff anyway.
Yeah. So during the change approval board meeting, or when you're requesting approval of this ticket, we haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
The person who is approving should be reading this security impact analysis and also doing a double check to make sure that it's well done and they didn't forget anything. So the next thing we have is, are any physical or logical access restrictions related to changes modified by this change? Now, this is kind of an obscure CMMC requirement, and in almost all cases, this is just a not applicable or a no. But if the change has to do with something like you're changing your access control to your data center, or you're changing how people have the ability to come in and modify your servers, that's where this starts applying and you want to start brainstorming it. In this case, no changes, right? We're not giving anyone additional ability to perform changes that they didn't already have. So what is the expected user impact? Users already experiencing outages. This will improve availability. If this was a more traditional change, you might say users will be down for 3 hours on Friday night, or there will be no impact, right? Depending on what you're doing. What benefits are provided by this change? Users will be able to work. What is the plan to roll back or cancel this change? Now, this one's a little bit tricky, right? So a lot of times I would be referencing stuff like, I have a baseline or I have a backup. I have the ability to revert to an earlier configuration. If I don't, or that doesn't make sense, I will often say, I'm going to keep really good notes of every single thing I did so that I can uncheck those boxes if things go wrong. And then, there might be a case like right now with this emergency switch where there's not a whole lot of options, right? So in this case, I'd actually say, if the switch replacement goes wrong, we will need to obtain a new switch and install that instead, right? So there's not a whole lot of parachute in this scenario. What other systems will be affected by this change? So this is trying to make you think, do I need to remember to make changes on some other related systems so that they continue to work well when I've modified this switch? So for example, in this switch example, you might have multiple switches that are daisy chained off of each other. And you're going to need to configure switch to switch routing protocols, which that's not exactly the right technical word to use, but I hope you know what I mean, so that they can send packets the correct direction, right? So I might say the downstream switch needs to be configured to transmit packets to the new switch, right? So that makes me realize I need to go have a plan to configure this other switch. Next, what documentation, training, or configuration records need to be updated after this change, right? We're trying to remember that we actually do need to keep our documentation, baselines, and inventories up to date. So hardware inventory, capture, baseline config, backup config from new switch. And also the downstream switch, right? And also from downstream switch, because we have to make a modification there. The final planning step was vendor risk assessed. So the supply chain risk management policy talks about this, and I would definitely read through that to understand what we're asking here. But essentially, there's a big issue where people are selling counterfeit hardware, especially with switches and routing equipment. And you should consider whether wherever you bought the new thing from, whether it could be counterfeit, whether it could be maliciously modified to spy on the inside of your network. I'm putting on my tinfoil hat right now. What's the risk of the vendor just giving you a bad product, right? Is the product going to die in 3 days and you're going to be in a bad place again? So if you've never purchased hardware from the vendor that you're getting this switch from before, then you do want to say, whoop, stop, maybe pick no, save the ticket, and then go into your vendor risk database and do a risk assessment of who you're buying it from. If you have already purchased from the vendor before, then you can come here and say, yes, they're already in the database, we're pretty happy with them, and continue onward, right? And then, so actually, if you've used the vendor before, you'd mark it as not applicable, no new vendor. If you'd never used the vendor, but you just stopped and you did a vendor risk assessment, then you'd mark it as yes. And if you decided that you weren't going to assess the risk from the vendor for some reason, you'd mark it no. This might get you in trouble with the person who's trying to approve your ticket. But it is an option, right? And you might say, I don't think I need to do a vendor risk assessment because this is an emergency, or I ran to Best Buy and I grabbed the switch really fast because we're having an outage and I don't have time, right? But let's just pretend that we have purchased Cisco switches from whatever our vendor is before. So we'll mark it as not applicable. All right. So let's say at this point, we finished the planning phase and we're going to make sure we save this ticket. And since this is an emergency change, I'm going to go to my CISO. I'm going to say, Jill, I need you to approve change ticket 105.
And I'll say, okay, let me look at it.
We're gonna look at it. Yes. So do you have any concerns with this so far?
Nope, it looks pretty good to me.
Okay. So at this point, Jill can come in here and she can mark that she approved. I can also mark that she approved it. As of today. And down here, this is another date stamped, time stamped section. So if I write in here, you know, Jill approved, it's going to say that I wrote it at this date and time. Which an assessor might be like, eh.
It might not be too bad on an emergency one, you know, as long as, you know, yeah.
If I was an assessor in this situation, I would say, hey, Jill, did you actually approve this?
Right.
Right. And hopefully Jill would say,
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's some leeway here. It looks best if the person who's approving it actually puts their, you know, remark in there. I've also seen people, if they use, you know, SharePoint, they'll actually put in a comment, you know, I approve the change today, you know, the impact analysis was logical, right? And comments also put in a timestamp. They have the exact person's name. You've got the non-repudiation going on. It's important to actually say words like I approve.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this point, we're going to go way up to the top. We're going to change the status. We're skipping right over pending approval because we just did that real fast. We're going to change it to approved for deployment. Now just let me pull back here. So you see how there's a testing and engineering stage in between planning and pending approval. That is something that your security person might want you to do on certain changes if they feel that they're fairly high risk, where they will say, hey, I don't even want to approve this until you have proven that you have tested it thoroughly. So just that's an option for you depending on your security person. All right, so approved for deployment. And so I'm now going to order the switch. So I'm going to put in my activity log. I ordered the switch today for our delivery, right? Scheduling install for 1 a.m. tonight because I'm a amazing system admin. And we're just going to wait. And it's now 4 hours later. And I got the switch and I installed it. Switch is installed. I configured the downstream switch to work with it. Things are happy. We'll monitor. All right. So you guys see how important it is to have this activity log, right? And how you're supposed to use it. In my own network, if I have a complex change where there might be 100 different things that change, or 100 different little configs, I'll normally actually track the change in an Excel spreadsheet, which you can download the template for it from the KCD. It's like the change work log. It's just a very simple spreadsheet. But that's a different way you can track what you did during a change. But this is good for very simple changes. So now that I've installed the switch, I'm going to change the status to wrap up. And that's a good status for stuff like where you're monitoring to make sure it's still good. You just want to let it burn in for a while. So let's assume that, now it's 3 a.m. in the morning. I just updated the change ticket. I'm going to go home to sleep. And now it is 2 days later and I'm back at work. And
did you sleep for 2 days?
Probably. It was a stressful day. Users were down. So now I'm going to come back in here. The switch is still good. Everything seems right. And I'm going to review this, and hopefully review through these notes. Okay, did I do the VLAN? Yes, I remembered that. Access control. Yes, I remembered that. I did update the firmware. Oh, shoot, I forgot to set up individual admin accounts because it was 1 a.m. Right. So this is why we have the wrap up phase, because you're going to forget little stuff like that. So I might actually switch this back to approved for deployment for a little while. And I might put in activity log, fixed user accounts. And then I can put it back into wrap up mode, right? To be honest, changing the status at that level of granularity doesn't really matter, but depending on your system, it might show the timestamps and assessor might like to see it. But I wouldn't worry too much about, going back and forth just to change one little thing. So now I'm reviewing this again. Okay, I got that. I got the user accounts. Okay, what else do I need to do? Okay, I got the downstream switch. I need to update the hardware inventory, and I need to capture the baseline config, right? So now I'm going to go do those things because, again, it's really easy to forget this sort of stuff. So I'm going to go update the hardware inventory. Maybe I'll set the old switch to decommissioned. And now I'm going to come back down here. I'm going to finish the rest of the change ticket. So when was the change completed? Whatever day it was. Were any milestones or tasks not completed, right? So this is, again, trying to get you to go look up at your planning to make sure you've remembered everything. But since I did, I'm going to say all completed. Right. By the way, yes, this is a question where you can say no, but no is not the right answer. There's a few cases where it might be the only answer, right? Maybe you had to abort in the middle of the change because stuff was getting worse. Or maybe you couldn't apply something because it turned out that the switch didn't support that config, right? And that's important to capture in here. But in our case, everything was awesome, so I wrote that down. Were any required configurations not applied? Okay, I did the ACLs, I did the VLANs. Yeah, we're good. All applied. Wrap up, was the configuration management hardware inventory updated? Now, why do you think that there's a question in the wrap up just for that? Is it because in our environment, it's really easy to forget to do that? So yes, I had updated it. Was the software inventory updated? no, not applicable. Right? You don't need to do the software inventory for this change. Did you capture new system baselines? Again, these questions are being asked because it is so easy to forget to do them, and they're CMMC requirements. So at this point, I might stop. I might go download the config for the switch, and I'd actually put it up in the IT department file share in the baselines area. Right, so yes, saved backup config to IT department baselines switch config. Right. Was training procedures or documentation updated? So if you had a procedure for how to maintain the switch, maybe how to install the firmware, or maybe you had gotten a user's manual for the switch, this might be the time when you upload the user's manual to the hardware inventory or update your procedure for how you deploy switches. If not, it's just a no, right? So no, not applicable. And then this last question, that is not actually part of our change database definitions for other people. We just had this in ours, so don't worry about that. And then finally, now that we've done all this wrap up, we would, since it's an emergency change, the change management database says that you have to review it during the next CAB meeting. So typically, sorry, I'm gonna keep that as emergency. Come on, SharePoint, you can do it. We're gonna change. We're gonna change the status to closed because it is closed. And during the CAB, you'd review all these closed changes. You'd also review changes that need approval or that are in progress. But that's part of the change approval board meeting notes, which is a different training. What do you think, Jill?
You get a raise. Great job.
Did all the changing, right?
Yes.
Yes. This is a pain. You know, doing all this documentation and stopping to fill out paperwork is a big pain, but it is expected from CMMC. And you know, as you've seen, you know, getting the documentation updated, getting the new baselines, updating the hardware inventories, the software inventories, applying configurations. Those could be security configurations, right? Vendor recommended security configurations. Getting approvals, reviewing your physical or logical access restrictions, performing a security impact analysis. These are all different CMMC requirements. Like I'm listing off like 8 different CMMC requirements that you are performing and proving that you're doing through this change ticket process. This has got a huge bang for the buck. And there's also another bunch of requirements like least privilege, supervision of privileged personnel, you know, restricting functions and all that. Yep. You can say that because you're following a strict change management process, which reviews all those things as part of the security impact analysis, that you're implementing them all through change management. This is such a strong procedure.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you.